Paul Utho joins us now. He's a public affairs analyst. As we start off with the PHCN's tariff review, we'll get that report now, but thank you for coming on this morning.
Good morning, everybody.
I know first and foremost, nobody wants an increase in any tariff, let alone electricity, where, of course, you know the current situation now. You're grappling with the little one you have, how many hours in 24, and now you talk about it. But they say it's not meant to impoverish the poor. It's just that if we have to privatize, which they say should be concluded by October, and there's no shifting in that date, investors have got to see value for money. And so if they have to do that, there has to be an increase, they say.
Interesting. But taking it from the cue that you have given, they don't want to impoverish the poor.
So they say.
They want to make it good for investors. But at the end of the day, you use the word grappling with the few or with the little that we have. But the little that we have is compared to nothing, in the sense that we are practically paying for darkness in Nigeria. If we take a census of organizations, look at an organization like Channels, if we ask how many times you have power from PHCN in a day, and compare to how many times you don't have power in a day that you run your generator, the same thing applies to us individually in our businesses, at home. We practically live on generators, and PHCN has become a standby instead of the generators being standby. And our take is this: if you are trying to make PHCN attractive for investors, every good businessman comes up with a feasibility study of what he wants to do, approaches a bank or whatever to get a loan, knowing the viability of what he wants to do, knowing that, okay, in 6 months' time, in 3 months' time, in 1 year's time, I'll be able to pay off. Why not do that? Why are you asking the people to pay for what they are not using?
Yeah, but in this case, if the investment is coming and power will not be, the format is not going to be the way it is now, wherein you get your estimates. Yes, I beg your pardon. You get your bill via estimation. That's different. But now, if a private company is providing you with that, you have to pay for the service you get.
I agree with you. Nobody is saying they don't want to pay.
But
nobody has said we don't want to pay. Nobody has said we don't want light. If you take a cue from one of the religious books, in the beginning God created the heavens and earth, and because the importance of light cannot be overemphasized, the next thing he went to do was, let there be light. People want light. There's no doubt about that. People want light. They're in a position, in a state where for the past 12 years since PDP has been in power, if I use that analysis, they've been in power, we've been hearing stories about how power is going to be transformed, how things are going to be good, how this and how that. So it's almost like the same story all over again. And we are saying, look, for this time around, because if you don't forget, last year the tariff was increased. I don't know, so many people didn't say it. It was increased from 4 naira 20 kobo to about 7 naira 30 kobo, silently. People were paying for it. You came out in January and you increased fuel, the same fuel that people used to power their generators because there is no light. People are growing in underpaying in Nigeria. And to now impose this on them, it's almost too much.
You know, the NOA, the National Orientation Agency, the Director General, Mr. Michael Mary, has been speaking on this matter, and he says, well, this is just to bring some kind of discipline when it comes to public infrastructure. And he did say another important thing, that the rich pay more for electricity, and that the money gotten from the rich will be used to subsidize electricity for the poor.
Do the rich really pay for electricity? It's a question we really need to ask ourselves, because when you look at those that are owing PHCN, they are among the rich and the mighty of Nigeria, including federal government parastatals. They are not paying. They came out with a figure and said, look, they are owing us this amount of billions. Not the poor man, not the average Nigerian, because the average Nigerian doesn't pay. The next thing you see is a pole hanging on a ladder hanging on the pole for his light to be disconnected. And when the light is disconnected, he still has to grapple with paying a reconnection fee.
Don't they hang the same pole in federal government agencies that owe them?
I have not seen any. I don't know if you have. But all federal government agencies that I know, just a few, maybe about 10% run on generators. All the others are PHCN, 100%. So it comes back to the same Nigerian masses who are groaning under so much pain with this and with that, and then you are coming to impose this also on them.
I hate to use this particular instance. I was going to ask you how you would suggest that the federal government, invites investors. But let's look at another instance, when they were going to introduce the telecoms mobile phone system and how it came into the country. If we had been told then that initially, as a start, we'll be paying 15 naira per minute, and we will not have the options of per second billing until maybe how many years after. So much so that if you use just 1 second extra, you're paying 15 naira for that extra second. Do you think that we would have kicked against it then and said, you know what, please keep the telecoms, we'll make do with the NITEL that we have?
Well, with NITEL had given a lot of people a lot of concern in the sense that you have to go and queue at a particular area. And so people were almost fed up with NITEL, or just like in this case. Now, people are not saying we don't want to change. It's the way the government is going about imposing that change. If the government is, just like I said, a simple analysis. If you are renovating a house, you have a tenant that lives in your house. The tenant has lived there maybe for 5 years. You want to renovate the house. You want to make it better. You don't just tell the tenant, come and pay because I want to renovate. You renovate, and I'll say to him, or even up to an extent, if we see power for 6 hours a day, and you say, look, you've had power for 6 hours a day consistently for the last 6 months, we want to review the tariff. Nobody will come out and shout. Last year when it was increased from 4 naira 20 kobo, up to this point in time, there has been no improvement. During the South-South Economic Summit, Channels interviewed the Minister of Power, and he said in 2 months' time, we would see an improvement. We have not seen that improvement. Now they are saying it's still December or till January.
It's not a month yet, is it?
I think they still have some time.
But you see, even before then, he was interviewed when he went to Egbin Power Station. And he said, there are some areas that are already enjoying 24 hours electricity. And I was wondering, I would like to live in such a place, and I was wondering, where are those places?
In terms of areas, if you take a poll, let's even use an area like Lagos. Some areas will have better electricity than others. Do you agree with that?
Like, when you say better, better in what?
Better supply, in the sense that some people have...
Let's quantify it in hours. How many
12 hours a day.
Really?
Yes, there are some areas like that.
Like,
you're not aware of those areas?
No, I am not.
Okay.
Because
this is a personal question. Do you use the pay-as-you-go meter, or you still use the estimated?
I've paid for the pay-as-you-go meter for the past 2 years. I've not gotten it.
Interesting.
Here in Lagos?
Yeah, in Lagos.
You should have raised some questions.
Well, we're asking questions, and not just me. A lot of people have done that.
No,
and there's also an issue with the pay-as-you-go meter, in the sense that
what is it? Yeah.
It's not transferable. So if you, for instance, you live in a rented apartment and your landlord says, I am not interested in the pay-as-you-go, and you go and get it, and he says, look, whatsoever you want to do with your pay-as-you-go meter, I am not interested. Don't take any money out of the rent that is coming up. But if you want to get a pay-as-you-go meter, that is your business. It means that when you are leaving that house, you must leave that meter because it's not transferable. That has its advantages, but the disadvantage for an average Nigerian who lives in a rented apartment, probably face me, I face you, a 2-flat or a 3-bedroom flat, he has to now go and get the meter for himself, and then when he's going, he can't take it with him.
Is that what they say?
Yes, it's not transferable.
Well, would that not mean that
we're getting some contrary?
Because people have done it.
Initially, they did say it's transferable. That when you live in your apartment, you can take it along if you're the owner of that particular meter.
I'm giving you an information right now. It is not transferable.
But anyway, this is what the minister is saying about the increase we talked about, which was done last year about 7 naira. He says, well, the 7 naira will not be reduced for people in the rural areas to about 4 naira per kilowatt for an hour. So it means that what the National Orientation Agency is saying to the people, looks to be true after all, saying that the rich will pay more. From that, we subsidize it for the people who don't even have enough. Because if the minister, Professor Naji, is saying that from the 7 naira, there's going to be a drastic reduction for those in rural communities to 4 naira per kilowatt for an hour, isn't that
so you will pay more? The person in the village will.
No, the
You
question.
wouldn't have a problem with that, will you?
I don't have a problem with that. You see, even if you are asking and you're reducing it from 7 naira to 4 naira per kilowatt, where is the power? What we are saying is this: let's see some power, let's see some change, let's see some drastic change in the power sector. You have situations where people run generators almost all day, businesses run generators almost all day. You and I are aware that a lot of our industries have moved into Ghana. Some are moving into Cotonou and saying, look, instead of staying here and dying here, they are moving away. Today, the industries we used to know are no longer here, all because of power. Yes, power will help us, but not impoverishing Nigerians the more.
Can I ask a question? Assuming it was done like this, for instance, say everybody had the pay-as-you-go meter, and then we were doing the power hike. Would the question of where is the power still coming? After all, if you do not have the power, your meter doesn't read. In fact, you only get to pay for what you have.
Exactly. If they give everybody a pay-as-you-go meter, just like what's his name, Bamidele Aturu had said some weeks ago, that before you go on this tariff increase, let's sensitize the people, let them get the pay-as-you-go, so people will pay exactly for what they consume. But in the absence of that, where you are giving an estimate bill, somebody comes to you and says your bill for last month was 2,000 naira when you had lights just 3 days in a month, and they are giving you 2,000 naira. It's almost absurd. And at the end of the day, I just hope that we will not see a chaotic situation or anarchy break out in the power sector where people will come and start disconnecting people's lights and they start beating up.
Yeah, because I think from everything that you've said, it seems to me that the fear is more that people who already get estimated bills will begin to pay more for electricity that they hardly have. But if you assuming people were paying for what they were using, the question of where is the light wouldn't exactly come in, because you only pay for what you get to see. And even for people that say that where is the light, if PHCN says, okay, fine, there is no electricity, let's go and disconnect every single line. After all, we don't provide anything, do we? People will still protest. And it's not exactly a fair representation of what PHCN has been doing over the years, is it?
It's not. It's not. And it's so unfortunate, because I think that is the first step. That is the first thing they should have been talking about. All these years, since 1999 when we had democratic institution come in, these steps should have been taken. And you see, when people also use the excuse to say, oh, this government has been in power for just 1 year. This government has been in power since 1999. And they should have been taking steps each year before we get to this point where you say you want to now increase the tariff to make it attractive for investors. Yes, we want investors to come in. And we're looking at not just one investor, but many more investors to make life more comfortable for Nigerians. If you go to Ghana, there is light. People want to go to Ghana. People want to go and stay in Ghana. And we call ourselves the pride of Africa, the giant of Africa, and what have you. Then when people come here, right from the airport, when you come into Nigeria, it's almost a sorry state.
Do you think the Nigerians are willing to pay for electricity? Assuming we were to be paying something way higher, maybe not 7 naira, maybe 10 naira, maybe 15 naira. Do you think we'll be willing to pay for it?
I believe
if we're short of electricity?
I believe Nigerians will be willing to pay, because almost every home, even in the face me, I face you, they have what they call the I pass my neighbor generator. So they fuel that generator. In an average a month, you spend nothing less than 5,000 naira fueling your generator just to have lights, some form of comfort during the month. So if that is translated to power from PHCN, I don't think anybody will really mind, because they will see where their money is going into. But where there is no input from that aspect, and you're asking them to pay for it, that is where the problem is. People are not advanced to paying for electricity supply.
Come to think of it, Have you ever thought about, I mean, yes, government, they have to provide it, and if they don't provide it, they have to take the flak for it. But have you thought about the possibility of, or questions such as, who could those trying to sabotage efforts be, or if there's any such thing? Because we hear all sorts of things. Sometimes we hear that you got these dealers in generating sets who pay some members of maybe electricity people millions to ensure that it's switched off. And we hear all sorts of things, and I mean, you know what they say, no smoke without fire. Every now and then you hear that. We hear estates who go to pay officials saying, listen, just make sure you give us a lot more supply than you give some other people. All those kinds of stuff. But we seem to disregard all of those, dismissing it with a wave of hand, saying, well, that doesn't matter. Let the FG do what they have to do. Well, we can keep doing what we have to do. Don't all those matter if they were true?
They matter. And I think to an extent, just like you said, there is no smoke without fire. It is true because, I mean, we are all living witnesses. We are Nigerians. We've seen it play out. A situation where somebody wants to have a party and he says, look, I'm going to have a party till about 8 p.m. Can you please give me power? And true to it, you see power supplied. At that party, it doesn't use a generator.
It happens.
It happens.
Oh.
It happens.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, it happens. And when you look at the influx of all manner of generating sets into this country, you begin to ask yourself, where have we gone wrong? I grew up in Nigeria. I did not grow up outside the shores of this country. And I know that when I was growing up, there was power supply. Generator was strange to us. Generating sets were very, very strange to us. But today, generating sets have taken over every establishment. If you are setting up a business, just like you make your feasibility study, you must also include the price of a generating set.
May have ships on the high sea as you speak, making their way
Making their way here. Why is this place a dumping ground? What is the government doing about it? Now, if all of these people put together, they found a green haven in Nigeria to import generating sets, why are they not doing that in other African countries? But because they know that they have some form of comfort, just like maybe you said, maybe they grease some palms, they bring it all in and they say, look, in this particular area, let it not be light for a while so that they can patronize us. I think the government has to take some steps to investigate some of these things, because they are not just CSA. They are not just like I confirmed to you. In some areas you want to have a party, you can go to NEPA and say, look, let this be done. And it is done.
But these are even if they are true, because they've not investigated to ascertain the veracity of such claims, it can be easily wiped out. Because look at states, for instance. Some of them say we actually have the capacity to generate and even transmit electricity to our people, but we have a big but there, which is a law. So it has to go to the national grid. They will distribute it the way they deem appropriate or fit. And so if that law is not dealt with or something amended about that law, that challenge is also there. But I'm not sure. Maybe they're working on it now. But do you see that also as one of the, if not what they should have dealt with a long time ago?
Exactly, I agree with you. Some years ago in Lagos started an IPP project at Egbin. The government of the day stopped it, nipped it in the bud. If Lagos State has succeeded with that, I'm sure today would have had power in Lagos. The same thing is going on in Rivers State, where they said you cannot transmit, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. Why carry this burden upon yourself when you know it's really, really a burden? You are struggling with something and somebody says, look, we can help out. Let them pay a certain amount. Let each state go and exploit ways of sourcing electricity for their states. If you don't want to do it by states, do it by region.
Yeah,
or do it.
If we know this much, pardon me for button there, if we know this much and feel hard done by, why don't we go through our members, our representatives in the National Assembly, and tell them what we feel about it, tell them what they should do about those laws? But we haven't done that, and they in turn haven't done anything about it.
Even, taking a cue from that, even beyond the House of Reps or the National Assembly, I think even people can begin to form little groups. They can write to the National Assembly. and say, look, this is what we think. If the states can also do that, they have an open door policy between them and the government. They have representatives from each state. They can call their state representatives, both in the Senate and in the House, say, look, this is what you need to push for. But, it's like people are benefiting from this thing, even in the states. So there is no push.
But look at it from this perspective also. We have a lot of community-based organizations, non-governmental organizations, civil society groups, Rescue Nigeria groups, a lot of them. Do we understand the way government works? And if we do, how is it that we don't see them champion such issues or have this long suffering, saying, listen, we will go through the process, we will push the bills, we will stay on this matter until something is done about it, without necessarily resorting to protest as a last resort?
Well, you see, when we talk about the civil society groups, the NGOs, they are doing a thankless service, in the sense that almost nobody says a thank you. And if, for instance, an NGO or a civil society group based in Rivers State feels, oh, this thing, it's too much, they have to go to Abuja. They will have to stay in a hotel in Abuja. They will have to put up with a few days. Then, probably before they see their reps or those in the Senate, they have to part with, something. So at the end of the day, when you look at it all, sometimes you just want to resign to life and say, look, anything the government wants to do, let them do.
Who doesn't want to make a good name for himself? Because everyone has been talking about this power issue, and we know the importance of all of this. Just as some have been saying that, well, first things first. A couple of people have been saying that, look, why don't you give us the electricity, as Mark rightly said, and some other people sending in tweets that say, come on, we can do without telephones, but you cannot do without electricity in your homes. So when we finally give the electricity that everyone so desired, would it be okay to now increase the tariff? Which do you want to come first?
It should be power first, not the increase first. And that is, we had a discussion on the first. There's a group I belong to called the Future of Nigeria. We had a discussion and we said, look, we are putting the cart before the horse. Give supply, just like I've used the analogy. If you are going in a public transportation system and the man says you should pay more and the seats are falling apart and he says to you, I want to repair the seats, but pay more.
What about if they come simultaneously, the power and the increase all at the same time?
No, Sulaiman, the reason why we will not go for that is because we have had promises from this government in the past.
No, but you're not being compelled if they have a lot of companies who invest. Don't you think that if they see that, okay, this is profitable, I'll put my money in this. But if the rates, from what they tell us, that other than Zambia, Nigeria is the other country that pays the lowest in Africa. That's what they say, even though people contravene that. Controvert it. But how do you invest if it's not profitable?
You see, we're still saying the same thing. Nobody is saying don't increase. Nobody is saying we will not pay. When I was growing up in Nigeria, we used to pay for electricity. Electricity was there. But now you're asking people to pay more for darkness.
No, it's like this. I don't think you, get the instance there. Yes, you're willing to pay, but what you want to pay for cannot come in unless the people who want to put in their money see that it's going to be profitable in the long run. If something is not profitable for you as an investor, you've done your feasibility study, you know how much it's going to cost you to be able to do this, to be able to make profit. Would you put your money in it?
We're saying
in the promise that, when you put in your money, don't worry, Nigerians will not mind. They will pay more money when finally, we can increase the tariff when they have electricity. Does that kind of promise work for an investor?
It doesn't work for an investor, but it also does not work for the masses. So in the sense that, just like I said, it's if you think it's a viable project, yes, there will be light. You are very, very sure about it. December or where have you, when these investors come in, you will get light. You can approach the World Bank or any of these other financial organizations and say, look, this is how much we need. They said about $20 million or thereabouts. You can say, look, give us 20 million, give us 50 million. In another 1 year, because by the time there is power by December, we will now increase the tariff.
Can I ask a question? Do you think the government should be in the business of providing electricity?
The government should not be in the business.
You
but
don't
the government
agree,
has been
because
in the
there are a host
business.
of people who will tell you that they do believe that all this talk of bringing in private investors, it's even balderdash. The government should actually be the one providing electricity. It's the government's responsibility. No one of those thinks that.
All over the world, government does not provide electricity. You have private investors come in and support. And with the way Nigeria is going, if we leave everything in the hands of government, we're going to have a big problem in our hands. So it's a good way to go, to have the private partner investment and what have you, to have investors come in. It's a good way to go. But you don't say because you want to do that, you now kill the people at the expense of making a business viable.
Even though
for
they say
investors.
they don't want to kill the people. It's not meant to kill the people. They repeatedly tell us.
No.
Why do we think they want to kill us?
We are using the same analogy. They increased this tariff last year, and we still don't have power. Now they are saying they are going to reduce it for those in the rural communities. We agree with you. No problem about that.
Okay, but provide it first.
Provide it first.
Or perhaps alongside.
No, provide it first, not alongside.
But there are three perspectives to all of this. You have the generation, transmission, distribution. And we've heard people talk about the fact that even if they can generate a lot of it, you have problems with transmission and distribution. They have to build capacity in those fields. But I know it's technical jargon to people. They just want to see the end product, electricity, the bulbs coming out at little cost. But have we also factored in all of those? Or are we just overtaken with the fact that we're sick and tired of getting sick and tired? Do what you will and get us this out of this mess.
The average Nigerian wants electricity, and that is where his buck stops. Now, it is on the part of those responsible for the generation, the transmission, and what have you, to put things in place to make sure that those systems work. Those things work. Because if you come out and you start talking about the generation, the distribution, all the man knows is that he wants to go to his farm, he wants to come back, he wants power to do one or two things, he wants to be able to have power to do his business. The average organizer, the average tailor, fashion designer, the average hairdresser, they are not concerned with all of this. Those are the aspects that the government should concern themselves, or those that are concerned with it.
But how would the government explain this particular challenge? Because sometimes, most of the milestones that are celebrated is in generation. And most times we're like, how does that affect us if we do not exactly see the electricity? How does the government explain the fact that, generation, being able to increase generation is something to celebrate in the very first instance? Because maybe somehow through some means they will finally be able to evacuate all that power they've generated to finally get to us. How do they explain it to the ordinary person on the street?
It's unbelievable that we have gone through this process for the last 12 years and we've not found a solution to it. During the Obasanjo administration, there was a power probe by the House which nothing came out of, about 16 billion naira or something in that.
Do you think it should be revisited? Let me deviate a little. Do you think that probe should be revisited?
If the House can, then they should. If they can't revisit it, then they should institute another power probe and find out exactly why we are where we are. Because when it doesn't rain, they tell you it's because it didn't rain. That's why there's no power. When it rains, they tell you, because it rains too much. That's why there's no power. So there's no middle point. There's no middle point in all of it. It's if you use the word jargons, that's what we get. We just get garbage in, garbage. Oh, why is there no power? Oh, because it didn't rain.
But you as an analyst, you appreciate some of the problems that the federal government could be encountering in its bid to try and increase power generation and then get it through the process where it finally gets to the end consumer.
I agree. You see, for instance, we have the Engbe Power Station. If in the last 12 years, the administration of PDP had said to themselves, let's try and establish one or two more generating plants or what have you, and wherever. It's something that could have been done with willpower. When you hear the kind of amount of money that has either been stolen or looted from this country by those that have been in power, you begin to ask yourself, if we had these people in power and this money was used for generation of power, then we could have moved ahead. But that is not the case.
So is your point that don't increase electricity tariff now if you're not going to make it a 24-hour supply. When you make it a 24-hour supply, then it can come with the increase in tariff. As long as if I'm paying for it, I'm seeing what I'm paying for. Is that your point?
Even 24 hours is too ambitious. Let's even start with 6 hours a day.
But
let's be sure that we'll have power for 6 hours a day. Okay. You see, just like I was saying some moments ago, when I was growing up, you could, if you were ironing and the light goes off, you could just stand there and wait for the next 5-10 minutes. But now, you have to wait. If they give you power supply by 5 a.m., you have to wake up by 5 a.m. and quickly do what you want to do, because you are not sure when next you are going to have it. So 24 hours might be too ambitious. Let's even say 6 hours or 8 hours a day. You are sure of 6 or 8 hours a day.
With the current status quo, or with an investor?
Whichever way. Let's leave that arithmetic for them to do. But let's say at least promise us and say, look, from July or August or whenever, you have power 8 hours a day.
Can I introduce a caveat here? Assuming, that's not achievable, would you say that introducing prepaid meters will be a middle ground for you?
It will not be a middle ground, because even if you have the prepaid meters and there is still no power, and you bring in investors who at the end of the day still want to increase.
But you only get to pay for what you get.
But if you increase it,
you already said you have no problem with the increment. What you have is paying for what you do not use.
Compared to now, if it's the same thing we are going to have, what I'm saying is, if it's the same thing we are going to have, where you are now paying 7 naira 30 kobo per kilobyte, and at the end of the month you still get a bill, or even if you are using a prepaid meter, you use maybe about 200 or 300, and then they are now increasing that from 7 naira 30 kobo to about 12 naira.
So you still have a problem with the increment?
Because there is no power.
No, but you only get to pay for what you use.
You get to pay, but it has increased.
Yes, you said you had no problem with the increment.
You get to pay, but it has increased, but yet it is not sufficient.
Okay, so the unit price increases, so it shouldn't increase.
It shouldn't increase until there is power. Just like I said, let's have about 6 or 8 hours.
Who do you have more faith in now? The PHCN run by the government and the investors coming in?
I might have faith, but I'll have to look at the investors, because if it's the same Nigerian investors that invested in the fuel subsidy, what have you, and ended up turning us all around, if it's the same kind of people, then I have a problem. But if you have foreign investors that are coming that are serious, just like you have some of the telecom companies that came in, are serious about doing business in Nigeria, then of course we'll have faith and we'll move forward with it.